Okay, folks, welcome to this critique. This is the week one watercolor session of July, and I apologize for it being a little bit late. We're starting with the Summer Lane, the painting the Summer Lane, and we're starting here with Bob's painting, which I'm loving the color in this, particularly in this central area here. The warmth of that path is quite beautiful, and it's played off nicely against the greens either side on the sort of undergrowth. Excuse me. You could probably do with a few more trees in this, I think, particularly in the background. You could make the background look just a little bit busier. So I think this really is a case of perhaps digging this one out again and putting a little bit more in the background on this one, Bob. Shadows are extremely good too. They fall across the ground absolutely perfectly, and as they chase up the opposite side there onto the foliage, onto the undergrowth, in a very convincing looking way. And it's a really good painting. The scale, how the path sort of diminishes in scale is also spot on. The ground plane looks convincing. It doesn't look as though it goes up in the air in the background, which can happen when we're dealing with these paths. Same thing can happen when we're dealing with roads and rivers and things like that, but not in this case. I think that looks absolutely spot on. So it's a really good job there, Bob. Just put a few more, infer a few more trees in the background, maybe even some sort of low-lying shrubs in the background also. Okay, next up we have Christine's, by total contrast, which I love to see these in our work. I mean, it's great that we're not producing things identical to each other. It means that we're really imparting our own ideas in our work, because I like this, the trees in particular in this, Chris, a very deliberate look about these trees. The shadows are a little bit confusing, perhaps. Just looking at, let me just take a pencil a moment. Yeah, it's just this one shadow looks to be a little bit confusing. The shadow of this tree here, I would have thought would come down about there and across the road here. So be careful with that, because I'm guessing that this shadow, this tree here is the one providing this shadow. So, just thinking in sort of what I sort of say practical terms, Chris, if it's a solid tree, you've got a good solid shadow to this tree here, and it probably wants to continue a little bit over this side. But you could, in your defense, I think, argue that maybe if the sun was at a higher angle, then the main part of that tree would do exactly what you've done here, and that's stop about here. So yeah, I'm just trying to read this. So the only one really perhaps we need to reconsider is the one I mentioned in the first place. I think if the shadow from here, from this nearer one, I think if the shadow from this nearer one is this, and it can stop there, then we're saying that the source of light, the sun, is sort of almost at right angles to the trees, to the plane. That means that this one would definitely come down here and across the path there. So we need to see that. It's almost as though you've got two different light directions, one coming from this direction, which is what the nearer tree is suggesting in the shadow, but the shadow off the second tree looks as though it's coming from an angle more like this against the tree, and that would then give that shadow that angle at the back that you've got. So be careful there, Chris. Yeah, just think in practical terms, angle of light and things like that. Yeah, I like this. I like it for its dynamics. Well done. Nice work. Next up, we've got Gwen. I think the photo has been taken at a bit of an angle, so I've got to be a little bit careful if the path looks like it's going up in the air a little bit. This could be because the angle of the lens of the camera that you use to take the photo might not be on the same parallel plane as the painting itself. So I'll send everybody out some tips on how to take your photos. So I think that's what it is. There's the path looks as though it's going up a little bit, but I'm getting the impression perhaps that that's a lot to do with, if you look at the tapering here of the painting itself, that means that the camera hasn't been the camera lens is not square to the surface of the paper. It's not parallel to it, so be a little bit careful with that. I think these trees look fantastic, full of life, almost sort of wiry looking things, almost as though they're sort of moving. So yeah, good. Add perhaps a little bit more yellow. Just break up these greens a little bit more here, Gwen, on the sides. You know, if you can imagine a slightly warmer yellow in places like this, just breathe a little bit more life into that, into those greens. But in all fairness, the greens that you've used are varied, and that's more important than anything. So yeah, so just think about the greens in the foliage themselves, and perhaps a little bit more texture in the nearer area. So we're sort of telling our viewers that, you know, this is sort of leaf and it's bramble and it's bracket and it's undergrowth. So if you just put a bit of texture in these nearer areas about here, that should work for indicating that type of texture, like a greenery and undergrowth. Good. Yep. Good work. Okay, folks, moving on to Lindsay's here. And probably the first thing I'll notice about this is there is good attention is being paid to the 70-30 ratio thing here. And particularly what I'm looking at is the 70% of cool colours, these sort of bluey greens, and 30% of the warm. Now, I hate to have to sort of throw another spanner in the works here for us all, folks, but whilst that is quite commendable, the cool areas will need some warmth and the warm areas will need some cool. So it's really important to know that you've almost got to break down the 70% again, if you like, and the 30% you've got to break that down a little bit. But thinking of it in more simpler terms, it's just a case of, if you've got an area, especially a largish area of cool, then you need some warm in it. As you would if you had a large area of warm, you'd need a little bit of cool in it. So if I just take a sort of a colour pencil here a moment, imagine me having a little bit of blue paint here somewhere, and perhaps somewhere back there. I'm afraid these colours on these pencils are a little bit too bright, but just a little bit of warmth, sorry, a little bit of cool in that warm path would make a huge difference, as would the opposite. In other words, if I take a nice warm colour here, and in all this coolness, just particularly around this territory here, just a little bit of warmth to break up the cools. So it's a bit like sort of, if you imagine if you painted if you only used black paint, you'd rely on the white of the paper to provide your white, and you'd paint a tree with the black paint. The black tree is going to look very flat unless you lifted some of that black paint out and allowed a glimmer of the white to live in that black area. And the white area would look very flat if you didn't borrow a little bit of that black paint from the tree and put it somewhere in the white area. Think of it that way. That's the easiest way to think of it. But that's what we need to be thinking in with our colour in the 70-30 ratio thing. So 10 out of 10 Lindsay 4, you know, giving us this clear 70-30% ratio in terms of color temperature. But just let's take our work one step further and now start thinking about this, a little bit of this warmth in cool areas and vice versa. One other thing I'd probably just want to sort of say, and that is the trees, they don't have much growth, much in the way of branches on them, so you can afford to go with a lot more branches in these trees, and it will make for a sort of, if you like, a more lively looking painting. I've only got one width at the moment on these branches, so I just take that pencil down a little bit and make some of those branches a bit smaller. But I hope you can see there what I mean. And again, talking about the temperature thing, I've just used very warm coloured branches. In amongst here, you'd probably just want to put a couple of cooler branches, cooler colours in those branches. So I don't get on with this colour pencil thing. I'm actually looking for another app on my computer to replace this. But I think you get the idea as to what I mean here. So just think about that, Lindsay, because your shapes are great there. You know, it's potentially great painting, and it could certainly still be you know, added to. So think of this as an unfinished piece of work, and give some consideration to what I've said about those particular things. So yeah, because everything's a great shape, everything's in scale. I love the disappearing path down there. Everything's very convincing. Good. Yeah. Okay. So on to Pam. So this is good, Pam. Yeah, a couple of things that we've covered so far in the other paintings. There's good texture here in the foreground. And this suggestion of white wildflowers here, these little dots of gouache. That's good. That's clever. It does make a difference to the sense of depth in your painting. Plenty of branches on the trees. Great sense of light. Plenty of busyness in terms of tree limbs and branches, etc. Scale's good. There's warmth in the background. It's very good. I'm liking this. One small note to make, I think, is that just be a little bit careful with the busyness. There's an area here, if I just grab an opposing colour so you can see my line work. This turquoisey area that I'm going to outline now of additional undergrowth is great. I mean that really adds another texture to the scene. But what you've got to be careful of is, I think, from about, I have to take another colour here, from about here back, you could almost just make that a smudgy mark, that turquoise blue, rather than give it any individual shape back there. So I'm going to have to erase that so you can see what I mean. So it's great to have the tangle of shapes here and here, but beyond that, I think you could just sort of smudge that area out a bit softer. You have done it to a certain degree, so I'm probably being a little bit mean here, because overall this is really, really good painting. Yeah, good. Excellent job, Pam. Okay. Next up we've got Ron. These trees are great. These trees are fantastic. It's a nice contemporary looking painting. For many reasons. Contemporary in terms of shape. I mean, those trees, I say they're contemporary looking. To me, they look like very realistic trees. What gives it, I think, perhaps its contemporary feel is the pushed purple colour of the shadows against those lovely natural looking greens. I like this. Yeah, very convincing. They look like beech trees. Great textures, good sense of form and depth. Yeah, some great textures in this path here too. I like the way you've broken up the edge of the path also. There's no straight lines there. Oh, that's a super job. Really like that. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I think you've got a very, very good painting there, Ron. Okay. Let's move on to Suzanne. This is a very warm key painting. Nice happy painting. Again, the trees, quite different to the previous trees of Ron's painting. Nevertheless, there's a lot of self-expression in these trees. And I say this just about everybody that I've ever sort of demonstrated to, I think. And that is, if you want to learn how to self-express, paint trees. Because we can see here in succession two quite different examples of two painters, two artists who are expressing themselves through the movement of trees, tree branches and limbs and trunks. And that's what painting trees offers us. It is an opportunity to show off our self-expression. And when it comes to particularly loose style painting, because we're not copying realism, this is what we need. This is the most powerful tool in our armory, is the ability to self-express. And in this painting, Suzanne, I think you've done a fantastic job of doing exactly that. I love the way these limbs and these branches just dance. They are like, they're more like dancing figures than trees. Coupled up with, good colours, good warm colours. It's a nice, jolly, quite exciting painting. Yeah. Yeah, that's great work. If I really had to split hairs, just be a little bit careful again at the back. Some of those edges to that low-lying shrub that's right down the far end, as far as we can see down the end of the path down there. It might just be a little bit hard of edge, but I really am, as I say, sort of splitting hairs a bit there. That's an exciting looking painting. I like that. Yeah, good work, Suzanne. Okay, folks, that brings us to the end of this critique. Well done to those that submitted their work. I will send out something by email as a little sort of hint and tips on how to take photos. Some of us probably just need a little bit of help there, just squaring the camera up to the actual painting so we're not taking our photos at a strange angle, because it makes it a little bit sort of unfair for me to sort of criticize things if they look a bit wrong. So I'll get that email out to everybody. So, but in the meantime, I look forward to the next critique and having a look at those.